Hello and welcome to this episode of Wise Human. Today I have with me Gabriella Alziari of Spirituality with Gabriella. Thank you so much for joining today, Gabriella.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Mm, I would love to hear more about your journey into spirituality. How did you find this? Was it something that was always there for you?
Mm, yeah, somewhat. When I was a child, I would daydream like all day, every day, and I would sit and imagine fairies and gnomes and playing outside and just having fun. And I had that childlike spirit. And then it got a little bit suppressed, as is normal in our current society, just by school and teachers. And then when I was around 14, I went to boarding school and I actually became very close friends with our head counselor because I was a peer counselor and she ran a meditation program. And I started meditating every day and became more connected. And I also started studying Buddhism at that time and just finding fascination and a different way of seeing life and even believing in past lives, like maybe we've been here before. So it all started to come together when I was around 14, and it has led me on this crazy, winding, lifelong journey. And now I am a spiritual coach and a teacher, and I love the work I do, and I'm so grateful to be here.
Hmm. Me too. I'm excited to dive into spirituality and what it means and how people can connect. So, first of all, what does spirituality mean to you? What is spirituality?
Yeah. People have asked me this question before, and the conclusion I've come to is it's a way of being. It's like setting the intention that you want to live a more intentional existence and that you're not just here in the flesh and blood. And a lot of people associate it with certain practices like meditation or yoga, but I don't actually think that's what spirituality is. I think it's just a way of expressing one's spirituality and connecting to what feels most authentic. But yeah, I think it's just a way of being. It's setting the intention that you don't just want every day to bleed into the next and be dry and boring, but that you want to feel alive and really live in the present moment and really connect to the breath and be. So that's what it has meant for me.
I'm hearing it's very about purposeful living
Yes,
and creating your reality and being present in the moment versus having everything mashed together, which is a beautiful way to be. And that's for me when I feel most alive and most happy and joyful.
exactly. Yes, exactly. Living in your purpose and allowing yourself to live it out every day and not trying to suppress that or make it smaller because I think a lot of a lot of people in our society are trained to shrink themselves and make themselves smaller, but when you're really living your purpose, your energy is big and it's expansive and it's joyful. So that's kind of how spirituality led me to this path.
Let's talk about that, about playing small versus being in your purpose and being big. Because I think a lot of people are scared to step into their purpose. They're scared to be seen, to allow themselves to have that big energy. There's fear around that. Could you speak to that and what your experience yourself and within your business and you've seen with clients has been?
Yes. I mean, that is my story 100%. I lived my life in fear a lot. I thought that I would have to always have a certain salary and a certain title at work, and that if I didn't get promoted every year, something horrible would happen. And I realized that I was tying my self-worth to all of these milestones, which, ultimately to me, there's obviously some merit in being motivated and making progress, but a lot of it is also just this fake reality that we create for ourselves. And it just didn't really resonate with me very much. But I was immensely fearful about pursuing what I knew to be my truth throughout my entire life since I was 14. Really, I knew that I was sent to the earth. That's how it felt. I was sent to the earth to teach and to be like a guide and to understand spirituality and share it with others so that they could live their purpose too. And I knew that all along, but at the same time, the ego mind and the voices in my head were so strong and filled me so much with fear that I just continually suppressed it until last year when I quit my corporate job and now I'm doing my business. And truly, I have never felt more free and joyful and playful and expansive than ever before. But in order to get there, I had to transcend a lot of fear and a lot of like deep inner child wounding that was holding me back for a very, very, very long time.
Let's dive into that if you're open to sharing more.
Yeah.
What did you have to do? Well, maybe first of all, what was kind of an overview of your journey, right? From being that 14-year-old to having this door of spirituality really open to you to last year quitting your corporate job. What happened in that time frame, career-wise or just internally? And then what was the inner work you had to do?
Yeah. Well, so from 14, I went to boarding school and I feel I was pretty much spiritually living at that time with the structure of school, which was nice. When I think things started to get really confusing was when I started my professional career and I was working as a consultant and I had no idea what I was really doing. I was just learning on the fly, but I was very successful at it. I got tons of accolades, like really right and left. I was being told you could be the next CHRO, you could be like the next big thing. And that was affirmative, but there was something within me that always felt like this friction. It was almost like when I went to work, I had to be so serious and I had to put this mask on. And that was the thing that I struggled with. And that was all learned behavior from childhood. I was brought up in a very corporate family in many ways, and that taught me a lot of really good skills, but it also kept me in a box for a long time. So it was like my programming. And yeah, so I started getting really interested in coaching. And I worked as a leadership coach for a while, which was even more fascinating because I was doing this in tandem with my own research on spirituality. And the more that I coached executives, I started to realize, wow, the fear never ends. The paranoia never ends. The anxiety never ends. And I would sit on these calls and I would think to myself, wow, this person would really benefit from Reiki or energy healing or meditation. But I felt limited and I felt like I couldn't really share it with them. And I think all of this was just designed to be like a mirror for me so that I was really looking at myself and thinking, well, okay, these people are examples of who you can become. And hey, why don't you use your own like spiritual tools and practices to live your life in a different way? And I will say I hired a lot of coaches, some who were very powerful for me, who did the deep inner child healing work with me. And I amassed this beautiful community of people who saw my gifts. I started sharing meditation content on YouTube, tarot content, all of the above, everything spirituality, started building a following. And without those people, there's no way that I would have ever quit my corporate job and become who I was always meant to be. But it was a journey.
Mhm. What's some of the inner work that you had to do? Like, what are the patterns and belief systems that you had to break?
A lot. And to be honest, I'm still doing it. I had a really big abandonment wound because when I was a kid, my dad would travel a lot. So he would be away for weeks or months at a time. And I would always be seeking approval from authority figures in my life. And that traces all the way back to childhood. But most certainly, when I was in boarding school, it was like my headmaster, I would look to approval from him, or I would look to approval from my coaches or my teachers. And if I didn't get an A, I would think I was a horrible person and had done something wrong. So I had this huge abandonment wound around, well, what if I don't make people proud of me? Like, what will happen if I'm judged? What if people don't understand what I'm doing? What if they think I'm crazy? So I felt like a lot of judgment, especially because not everyone understood what I was really doing with my life. And I think it's really normal. Naturally, people come from a place of concern because they don't want you to quit your job and be like a crazy hippie and live like with a couple odd dollars. But at the same time, that's not who I am. Like, I do have a pragmatic side, but that fear was just so big and had been so present my whole life. And then, interestingly, for those who believe in it, I've also done a lot of past life regression work. And so I've seen a lot of past lives I had that were about like carrying on my family's legacy and things like that. And I think all of that was additional inner child work in some ways that I had to do to just release that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And did you do that primarily with coaches?
Yes, I did. And to be honest, it would have been hard to do otherwise. Like, I did a lot of reflection, and I do believe that you can read and find like different pieces of information. For a while, I would listen to podcasts like every single day, and that was my guiding light of, oh, there are spiritual people who are successful and making money and, being like successful in this day and age. But yeah, I really invested in some amazing coaches who held the vision for me and were just like this beautiful mirror and wouldn't let me budge and wouldn't let me step outside of my light and my power. It's like every single session they showed me that. And if I wasn't reflecting it, then they would call me out. And that was perfect. That's what I needed.
I think we all need that. We all need people that see us in our highest and best and that care enough to speak out about it. And then on the coach aspect, having somebody in our lives that's been there, that's done it, that can, it just accelerates your healing process, right? Versus like trying to find your directions to your way somewhere with no directions. Like you might get there eventually because you kind of know it's in that direction, but it could
Yeah.
take 10 times as long.
And it shows you that it's possible and that your dreams can be a reality. So I think, just like we have really positive teachers in our lives, we also need like really positive coaches and mentors who kind of hold that vision and express it in their day to day too.
Do you think you'll ever not have a coach in your life?
Um, Maybe. I think it's possible. I have gone through a couple different coaches, and I go through phases where I think sometimes I just need to integrate all of the learning. So I take a pause. But I do have this personality where I'm this lifelong learner. So even if I don't have a coach, I'll probably be digesting information on some new type of spiritual healing that I'm not an expert in yet. So there's always different forms of coaching. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you speak more to the process of integrating? Because I feel like a lot of times we can get really caught up in doing the research and reading and learning about stuff, but then
Mhm.
not actually integrating it into our being. So
Mhm.
change isn't really happening. We have a lot of information, but we haven't put it to use. So the action piece.
Yeah, I mean, you're preaching to the choir because I was that person for so long. I would study things and I would master these topics. I took a lot of pride in becoming an expert in everything, whether it be psychology or behavior change, even. But I think there is something to be said about it comes down to really little things and being really intentional, like those tiny habits that you do every single day that actually do create lasting behavior change. So it could be as simple as meditating every day, journaling every night. But here's the thing, most people commit to it and then they fall off like between 5 to 30 days later. It's just, I've seen it time and time again. And it's human nature. But without those habits, there is really no integration. Or it's like something that you realize, but then it doesn't actually energetically stick. And I would also say to people, don't judge yourself for that because you're only human and there's a little rebel inside all of us. There's like this little inner child who doesn't want to always follow the rules. But once you find something that really speaks to you, like whether it's meditation, journaling, running, whatever it is, I do think it's really important to seriously make it part of your life in the same way that you would make a relationship part of your life and commit to it. Like, one coach said to me, "Well, why aren't you committing to yourself? Meditation does so much for you. Why aren't you committing to yourself? Like, why are you okay with putting everyone else's needs and problems above yours?" And that really hit me. And once she said that, there are just certain things that I've committed to that I've never gone back on.
Mm, yeah, the commitments we make to ourselves are
Hmm.
key. We have to keep them, right? Or our self-esteem goes away and then it's like this spiral. So
Yeah.
what if okay, kind of what you just said, but you know what you need to do, but it's just like, it's just so hard. It's like, how do I what's a first step that somebody can take?
Hmm. So I think that it's normal to go through these times in our life where we go through like an energetic slump or even an energetic darkness. And some people call it depression or anxiety because it can definitely become that. And that's very real. But I think that, if you're having trouble finding that thing or really committing to it, it's just trying to connect back to what I call source energy. That's what we use it in spirituality. So it's connecting back to remembering that you are human, but you have a soul. And in some ways, those two things can be kind of different. And so if you can find that limitless energy, whether you find it through running or singing or meditating, whatever it is that you find your flow in, that's like your way to hack life. So really setting the intention to find it, I think is really important. And being willing to try a bunch of different things is really important. And then even if you can't get there and you're truly so stuck, you just can't feel it, at least try to visualize it. When you're a kid, we sit around and we daydream all day. And that is energetically calling something in. That is energetically saying to the universe, I am ready to call this in. And even that alone is actually incredibly powerful. They've done a lot of studies on that. People that visualize their success are a lot more successful than those that don't. So, hey, that's a good way to start.
Yeah, that makes me think of sports psychology. Like you visualize making that hole in one or that three-pointer to win the game, and it's
Yeah.
incredible what it does for your actual physical reality.
Yeah, it's true. I've read so many things about that, and sports psychology is very powerful. And, often athletes, they just say failure was never something that they considered as a possibility because it was always just re-visualizing. So if you knew that there was no such thing as failure, it's okay. You're rewriting the script every single day when you re-visualize your reality. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we create our reality, right? So let's talk about the universe. I don't believe that the universe hears the negative, but I call it universe. You call it source energy. It could be God, your highest self, whatever it is that resonates with the listener. But um, I don't believe that the universe understands the negative, that it only understands the affirmative. So if you're like focusing on I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want this. You're going to get more of that thing because that's what you're putting out to the world versus flipping it to the affirmative. This is what I want and I seek. Do you feel the same way, and if so, can you expand on that?
Yeah, I think that that's an interesting point.
Or do you feel differently? I'd be curious to hear.
Well, I do believe that humans essentially run on programming, and we have the ego mind, and then we have the brain, and they're two different things. The ego mind is like this crazy chorus that plays these different stories every single day, and it's like this rebellious child that will try and make you believe that you are less than, that you are small, etc., unless you program it to work for you. In which case, I think what you're saying is if you're setting the intention for positive things to happen to you, naturally your ego mind will start to work for you more so than create chaos and havoc, which it likes to do. And then your brain is just operating and thinking for you. And that can be super easy. You just give it what to think about and it works as such. But I do believe that everything is energy. Every thought form is energy. Every intention is energy, and energy is constantly changing. And so I do tell people, if you find yourself to be in like a negative slump, it's okay because energetically you can change it. It's only your ego mind that makes you think that you can't. But trying to be intentional about the energy that you're putting out there. So you can say, I am in deep grief right now, but I'm holding the intention that soon enough or one day I will get through this. Like, that's fine. You're holding the intention that you're going to transform. And I think that in itself is really powerful. You can also say, I am super fired up and inspired right now, and I'm holding the intention that this will magnify and that this is going to go into every aspect of my life, my relationships, my business, my life purpose. So I think everything is energy, but it's always changing. And obviously, we want to surround ourselves with positive people, positive influences, healthy food, high vibrational energy. Yeah.
Yeah, we're the product of what we're surrounded by.
That is very true. Very true. And that's why I do agree when they say you are the 5 people that you hang out with most. I
Hmm.
think that's so true. I have literally witnessed it in my life, like when I've hung out with people who think a certain way, which is maybe not so productive. I've found myself taking on those beliefs, which are not mine at all. But again, the ego mind will trick you and will make you think that it's yours. And then that's why, when people get into a relationship, for example, and they're like, oh my gosh, I feel so happy. It's because you've changed the people or the person who's closest to you, and you and that person are literally exchanging energy all the time and thoughts and beliefs and conversations. And so naturally, your mind and your behavior and energy will adjust to match your new reality.
How does somebody find their purpose if they don't know it? You knew yours at 14, but did you really like, did you know that, or was it like subconsciously you knew?
you know, I uh, I think when I was about 6, I did know. I will say that
Mm.
I think I did know, and then I think I went through about 15 years of convincing myself that I was crazy, that I didn't know, and that was not my inner knowing. That was what was projected onto me, and I took it as my own self-belief. So I was laughing because I think a lot of people come into life knowing their purpose, and often in my coaching sessions, especially the purpose-driven ones, we ask, okay, when you were a child, like, what did you feel your purpose was? Usually everyone laughs, but it's actually not that different than what lights you up today and what you probably should be doing in this lifetime because it probably gives you energy and makes you joyful and happy. So yeah, but I think it's easy to delude ourselves, and it's easy to do so because we have certain anchors in life like money, and we need to pay our rent, and we look for reputation and recognition and pride. And all of these things are honestly, in my mind, now that I've transcended a certain phase of my life, they're like great delusions. Like, I think humans made these things up, and they can serve us to a certain extent, but they can also delude us to an extremely great extent. And yeah, once I started to let those things go, I felt a lot more free and a lot more happy. And I was giving my own self permission to live out my purpose, which is really just to be a spiritual guide of sorts, however that shows up, and to just share my light with the world. Like, that's really all my purpose is. And yeah, it's been fun. It's been a lot more joyful this way than whatever reality I was living before.
So if somebody doesn't know their purpose, the first step would be to look back to when they were a child and what did they want to do then? And then also what brings them joy today?
Yes. And then the other thing I share often with people is to pay attention to your body because I believe that we have like an energetic code that runs us. And it's like a spiritual knowing that we come to the earth with. And so when your body expands, when you feel light or you feel joyful, or you sometimes have these moments where you feel like I'm living my purpose, that is so important to listen to because everyone's had that probably once at least. So listen to those moments. And then equally listen to the moments where it feels like you are contracting or where it almost feels like a grating energy, like you're being energetically stuck or there's friction. That is a sign that you're just trying to twist yourself and that you're using whatever is around you as an affirmation that you should twist yourself. But that is what I think is the great delusion. So yeah, pay attention to your body too.
Yeah. Yeah, the body tells us so much. I
Yeah.
mean, there's so much information about that and like somatics and whatnot, but that's for another episode. So what about if okay, so now I figured out this, I think this is my purpose or something in this direction is my purpose. How do you coach people to step into that? And second part, like two part, how do they step into that and how do they turn off the alarms from everybody else saying, no, 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 what are you doing? What are you doing? Hold on, I don't think you should do that.
Yeah.
Or essentially wanting them to be who they know them to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll talk about the second part first. At least from my own journey, I think it's really important to seek influences that affirm what you want to be, essentially. So for me, it was coaches. And then I also found spiritual communities, and some of them were like meditation groups, some were Reiki groups. And every time I was in those spaces, I felt safe. I felt like I could really be myself. I felt like I could let go of whatever the programming was or whatever the old energy was. And that further aligned me to my purpose. And it also made me believe, oh, I can actually do this. And even though I didn't know how it was going to look, it was like constant inspiration seeking, and I was getting a lot of data. So I think surrounding yourself with the right people and communities is really important. And if you need to find them online, I think that's super powerful. Most of the people that have changed my life, I actually found through online communities that I look for myself. Like there was a moment in time where I was on Facebook and I was searching heart-centered business owners, spiritual entrepreneur group. Like you do have to sit and do that and you'll never regret it because it's giving you that life. So I think that's really, really important. The second thing is pay attention to who is giving you advice. Like often we default to just saying, okay, if an authority figure tells us something, but are they living the life that you want to lead? Like, does their life actually look like what you want to have 20 years from now, 50 years from now? Is that who you want to be? If so, they're probably giving you amazing advice and you should definitely follow it. But if not, if you want your life to look different, then you might want to start seeking advice from different sources who align to what you're looking for. So I think that's huge. And then in terms of taking steps towards your purpose, it's like taking these little risks. So in product development, we have something, it's called the minimum viable product. And if you truly don't know, well, what the heck? Like life is like a learning laboratory, and the people that support you and encourage you are going to love it when you put something out there that you're inspired by. It could be an Instagram post, it could be a coaching program that you set up, it could be whatever, but make it small. Don't make it like this huge thing because then you're going to put pressure on yourself. Just make it small. Just think of it as a series of little iterations. And trust me, I've gone through a million in order to get to where I am. And I'm so glad that I did because I was constantly getting feedback from people and also from the market. And that just made me a stronger coach ultimately. So start to reframe failure as just learning and think of life as this learning laboratory. You're just putting out pieces of information and seeing what resonates. And if you're being really truthful to yourself and you're being really honest about what you love and what you want to do, chances are that there's someone else out there who will literally magnetize to your energy and will get so much out of what you have to offer just by being truthful. So go for it.
I like the learning laboratory. I've never heard life explained that way, but that's a beautiful way to say it. It really is. That's life. I mean, to get to any success, there's a million failures. Like just think about when we were children, when we learned to walk. How many
Yeah.
times did you fall down? Countless. I can't remember, but did we ever get frustrated or pissed off? No, you just get back up and you like try again. And
Yeah.
yeah, somehow, somewhere along the way, that gets programmed out of us that there's like
Yeah.
shame around failure.
Hmm. Hmm. Which is ridiculous because everybody fails. And so nobody really stops failing less. People just stop sharing it with others. And that's the shame. We take on this shame of, oh, I can't share this thing that I failed at. But then we're not learning really because you feel shameful. And then the other person will never know either. And there's actually a lot of benefit in sharing things that didn't work because you're probably going to help someone by sharing that. So, yeah,
Mhm.
I'm just all about being honest and thinking that life doesn't have to be so serious. Like, what the heck? Who told us it has to be this big, serious thing? Like,
Right?
who made that up? Like, why can't we be joyful and be happy? Like, chances are that most people will actually love it. The happier we are, the happier our communities will be. So, why not?
The ripple effect.
Yeah, exactly. Mhm.
So you've talked a little bit about energy work and tarot cards and Reiki, spirit guides. Maybe you didn't say spirit guides, but I know you know about spirit guides. So could you dive into a little bit of those and whatever else you want to mention that is, a spiritual practice
Yeah, yeah,
and what they are, what they mean?
yeah, sure. Well, so I now work with spirit guides. That's what we call them. They're like a team spiritually that's supporting you. And spirit guides are usually known to be spirits that used to be humans and have gone through similar challenges and navigated similar transitions that you're going through in your life right now. And I love working with spirit guides because it's a way of essentially channeling energy. But I think the most important thing is it's a way of connecting back to your source energy or your truth. When I started my spiritual entrepreneurship journey, I started a YouTube channel and it started with tarot. I was not what anybody would ever consider to be psychic or connected. I was just someone who was interested in spirituality. And after doing a lot of different tarot readings on YouTube and just putting content out there, people started telling me, how did you know that? How are you so psychic? Things like that. And people started telling me, oh, you have all of these crazy abilities that you don't even know that you have. And now I find it very interesting because all my clients will come to me to be like a channel to connect to their spirit guides and get guidance and affirmation on their path and where they are. And so spirit guides, I think, are really just like your team cheerleading you, wanting you to live out your purpose. And the more you're able to connect to them, the easier life is because you feel like you're not alone and you have literally a whole team behind you who is holding the vision for you. And really, everyone has a different purpose in this life. And in every life that we have like one big mission. And connecting to your spirit guides is a great way to live it out. So, yeah.
Could you share a little bit about Reiki?
Yeah. I love Reiki. Reiki is a form of energy healing. And so in Reiki, we believe that there's a abundant amount of energy in the universe. And what we want to do is we want to essentially channel or pull that energy into the body in order to balance our energy centers. And when our energy centers are imbalanced, we are happy, we are joyful, we are balanced. That's the most important thing. We're at like an energetic equilibrium. But when we're out of balance, that can manifest in stress and tension and dis-ease in the body. And we're exactly like a car with a tank of gas. So as we go throughout life, it's really normal that our chakras or our energy centers will become misaligned. And so Reiki is just a way of realigning them. And the Reiki master is like a channel that channels that divine life force energy and helps you balance. And it has been by far the most powerful tool that I have used in my own life and for my clients. And to be honest, I think in some ways it's even more powerful than coaching or than tarot or than speaking to your spirit guides, because you are constantly bringing your energy back into balance. And once you realize how powerful your energy is when it's in balance, truly nothing is off limits. You can do anything. So it's great. I love it.
Do you think everybody has the ability to connect to source energy?
Yes, I do. I think every single person does. Do they want to? Not necessarily. I definitely see um there's definitely a fear sometimes that I witness where it's like, oh, it doesn't make sense to me, therefore I don't want to try. I see this a lot. That's fine. You know, not everyone will connect to source energy in this lifetime. That's okay. But I know for a fact that everyone has the ability to connect. And it does start with slowing down, quieting the mind, releasing your to-do list for a moment. Even journaling is a way of connecting to source energy. If you truly allow yourself to get into a flow where you're not really thinking, you're just kind of writing, I believe that that is connecting to source energy. And that in itself is a form of what we call channeling, receiving like divine guidance or messages from the universe. But yes, I do. And another reason why I really do think that is because when I was a child, I would read these books about spirituality. And I remember one said, you are either born psychic or you're not. And of course, being psychic is it's a more dramatic version of connecting to source energy like all the time. But I remember being so depressed because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be psychic. That's so sad. I really want to be psychic. And really, like through doing tarot every single day and sitting and trying to receive messages, I did it for a whole year. And maybe around 3-4 month mark, I started to connect spiritually to spirit guides and start to receive spirit guide messages. So it's just like a muscle that you practice or that you build.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think sometimes it can just come through
Yeah.
and we don't always trust it. Like sometimes maybe we call it intuition. I
Yeah.
I kind of think they're the same thing, but how do you if you're not in touch with source energy or your intuition, how do you begin to trust it? Cuz we all hear at least a faint little whisper. How do we begin to trust that that's true?
Track it. Track it. Write down whatever your intuition said or whatever downloads you got, if you're comfortable calling them downloads, and just to think of it as an experiment. You can think of it in a really logical way if you choose to, but yeah, write it down, see if anything comes of it. Maybe nothing will come of it for 5 years, but then you'll be really surprised when something does, and you'll say, hey, remember that moment 5 years ago where I had that insight? Really, everything in our life is like this web. It's all designed. I remember reading this crazy story about this man. He was ready to start a business, but he had a lot of fear around it. And this business card just like fell out on his table. He had no idea where it came from. And he called the person from this compulsion to call them. And they ended up being business partners and creating this like huge business together. And there's just all these moments in our life that are honestly logic cannot explain. So if you start to track it, you will start to see that you're being guided. And it's not just you, you have a whole team in spirit who is guiding you and protecting you every single day.
If you ignore those messages as they come through, does it make it harder to receive them in the future?
It makes it harder for your spirit team to connect with you. And I always tell people in a joking but realistic way, think of it as a relationship. Like if you have a partner who you're constantly ignoring and you're just like, yeah, I don't care about your opinion. it will be harder for them to get through to you. So, yes, it does make it harder because energetically, you're almost putting up a barrier or a block. And when I work with people and I do readings for people, everyone has an energy field, which is like the aura around them. Some people have very wide and expansive auras, and it's not always because they're spiritual. Sometimes they're just energetically a very joyful and open person. They're very open to learning. And then other people have a much more shrunken aura where they're questioning everything. And there's a time and place for that too. But, maybe in this lifetime, being really spiritual or being really connected might just not be their calling. And that's okay. But yeah, it's a real thing.
How does somebody learn to channel? Like, is there a way that they can deepen it through practice? I mean, you said through practice you deepened it, but what does that look like practically?
Yeah. There are a few tactics. I will say it has to be like a very consistent practice because it's not as easy as reading a book and absorbing information. There's no one way to channel. There are all different ways of receiving information. You might be clairvoyant, like you might see images in your mind's eye. You might be clairsentient and receive it through your body's knowing. So I think that the first way is set aside time to connect and literally ask whatever you associate with. It could be the universe, it could be your spirit guides. Please come through. Please be connected to me. It could also be God, of course. Just setting the intention to do that and doing it every day is going to already create a lot of change because most people don't do that. Just being honest, most people don't. So if you do that, that's already going to help a lot. Secondly, run little experiments. So you can track things like, okay, today on a scale of 1 to 10, I believe I'm going to feel an 8. And then at the end of the day, just see. Now, some people would say that you're programming your mind to experience the day that way. But hey, if it works for you, why not? Because it's going to make your day even better. So there's nothing to lose. Also, start to track when you think of someone and they text you or they call you. Like, start to think of it as these little moments that you test. It's like building a muscle in the gym. And every single time you're doing these things, it's like taking these little breaks. They're like muscle testing breaks that you're working with. So yeah, I think it's a practice of slowing down, connecting. And then also, if you believe in spirit guides, speak to them out loud. Try and cultivate a relationship with them. I'll be driving and I'll say, hey, spirit guides, I'm leading a retreat in July. I would love for it to be really expansive and beautiful. And I would love to sell out. And I would love to talk about fairies and gnomes. So I'll literally tell them my intentions. And the more that you kind of speak to them, the more you'll start to receive information back.
Can you share an example of a time that you manifested something through this practice?
Yeah, sure. When you first said that, my first thought was my whole life. I feel like I've my entire life. Yeah, I mean, I'll try and share too. The first thing that comes to mind is I was in a cacao ceremony and the facilitator asked us to visualize ourselves in the future. And I saw myself as a healer leading these circles. And at that time, I was not a healer. I did some spiritual work, but I mean, I didn't really didn't really connect to it yet. But I just thought, oh wow, that's powerful. Like I could feel the energy of it. And I left that experience thinking, well, that was really interesting. And I don't really know what to do with that information yet. And now, 2 years later, that's what I do for a living. So I was literally seeing something in the future that had yet to manifest. That's what we call a download. I think the second thing is I've said to my spirit guides, hey, please send me some inspiration. Like I'm feeling really dry. I want to bring something to life. I know that I have something to share with the world. I just don't know what the heck it is at this current moment in time. And it will always be in those moments of stillness or those in-between moments, like taking a shower or lying in Shavasana and yoga. Like one time I just got raise your vibration. It was just this phrase that came into my head so strong. And I just thought, that's it. Like, that's the next class that I'm going to construct and teach. And it was so clear in that moment. And I went home and I just made the entire thing, like literally that day, all 8 weeks. So yeah, it's those downloads and those moments that you just can't ignore. But I think asking for it is a really powerful practice, and you'll start to notice that the universe does give back to you.
How do you tell the difference between a daydream and a vision? Like, are we just dreaming of a potential, or is this actually a vision of my future?
That is a really, really good question. I think it is, there's something that I like to call the energetic vibration. I can't think of another better way to describe it, but sometimes you'll see a visual and it will feel very powerful. Like it will feel charged, it will feel important. Sometimes you'll see a visual and you're just like, oh, that was nice, just kind of floaty, almost more like a dream. And I think that's really the only way that you can tell, because as far as I'm concerned, they're pretty close. But I think a daydream is just a little bit more like you allow your mind to float off into space, kind of like a kid, and you daydream and that's it. And a vision has this power. It's like an anchoring energy to it where it feels powerful, it feels important. It also probably feels like your purpose. So, yeah.
That's beautifully said. I like that. Yeah, there is more of a power to a vision. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then how do we add in, so visions come through. We don't decide them. They just they're like you said, they're a download. They come through. We don't have any control over it. Daydreams we kind of do. And then what about manifesting through visualization?
Yeah. Well, that's the beautiful in between. So I do believe that we co-create our reality. Um, and essentially we are setting the intention to bring certain energy into our life. So when I was working my corporate job, I was not feeling so great about it. And I would kind of daydream, oh, wow, imagine if I could do this YouTube thing full time and do spiritual work full time. I was kind of daydreaming, but in doing so, I was setting an intention and speaking to the universe in a way. And now that's my life, and now that's what I do. So it works. So I do think that visualization is really powerful because you're putting yourself in the driver's seat. You're basically saying, hey, I am going to visualize what the road ahead looks like, and I am in the driver's seat. I'm not just going to let everything happen to me. I'm starting to take some real ownership of life. And I think that's really how you create your reality. And it's like this constant conversation that you have with the universe. And the more that you do it, the more you start to see that literally everything in your life is a product of your visualizations and your intentions. And anyone that tells you otherwise is probably wrong, to be honest, because if you really track it, you'll see, even statistically, it's so statistically crazy once you start to look at it that you see, oh yeah, I can change my life. Now, I will say one thing, just for everyone who's listening. I do believe there are moments in our life where we are wishing for a certain reality and it's just not happening yet. And I think that's where there's usually a great lesson that we have to learn. Like there was a reason that I stayed in my corporate job for as long as I did. I had to learn those lessons. I had to learn certain strategies that I am now using in business, which at the time I saw no merit in it. Honestly, I was just bored to tears. But now I'm doing things that I was doing 2, 3, 4 years ago. And I'm like, oh, that's why I had to do that. And that's why I had to be that resilient and go through that hardship. So sometimes you just don't know what the lesson is yet, and just let it play out.
Is it ever that that's not going to happen? The thing that you want to happen is just not going to happen.
No, I don't think so. Based on the energy work that I've done, I truly don't think so. I think anything is possible. And that's why there are stories where people go through these great transformations, and there are these like rags to riches stories. And it's because that person held the vision, and when everyone else just didn't and thought whatever, they never gave up. And it's the people that never give up that end up being super successful. Most people give up because they're not getting that external validation. But if you literally never give up, there's no way that you will fail. That's what I believe.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Keep going. So many, there's like statistics out there that so many people stop right before, it's like you keep
Yes.
trying, keep trying, keep trying, and then give up. That's why it's important to do something that you're passionate about that you would do regardless. And
Yes.
also, if you're seeking external validation, as you were talking about earlier, maybe there's a wound that needs to be healed
Yeah,
before you can get to the level that you want to.
exactly. Hmm. Yep.
I love the way the world works because I literally sat down to record like little short clips just for social media. And so many of the things we're talking about are the things that I was talking about.
Really?
Yeah, like
Crazy.
incredibly. Like 5 different things. Yeah. I'm like, okay.
There you
I hear
go.
you, universe.
Amazing. Yeah, that's why everything is so aligned. And it's also like a timing game. Like, let's say we had this podcast a month before, that might not have been the case, you know? So it's just so
Mhm.
fascinating how aligned things are.
How do you trust the process of timing?
Mm. Well, time is created by our human construct. So I think that if you can see the lesson in what you're going through, as much as possible, it's helpful. Like, even if you feel that you're stuck somewhere energetically, or you're stuck in a job, or you're stuck in a reality that you don't like, if you can try and reflect and understand what strengths you're gaining, I think that helps you kind of not over optimize on time, but instead just understand that this is part of your life's purpose. Like, you need to learn this in order to really level up and in order to really be who you're meant to be. So I think try not to focus on the specific hours or the days, because that's not that helpful, but focus more on the lessons and what you're extracting out of it. And then you'll see it will all be okay. Life is like this beautiful flow. It's like a river, and there are some rocks sometimes, but you get around them and it all works.
Mhm. Thank you so much for being here today. I have a few final questions for you.
Sure.
Well, first of all, is there anything else that you feel to share?
Oh. No, I believe everyone has their own inner knowing, and we're kind of always being shown these reflections of what we already know to be true. So, whether it's listening to a podcast or reading a book or getting a download or having a moment in yoga class where you feel connected, I think just pay attention to those moments, because they're all designed to bring you to what you're meant to be, which is you, exactly as you are, not trying to really change yourself, but just giving yourself permission to be what is most authentic to you.
How can people connect with you?
Yes. So, a lot of different ways. My YouTube is Spirituality with Gabriella. My Instagram is spirituality_Gabriella. And then my website is just my last name, alziari.co. So ALZIARI.co. And I do personal readings, Reiki, tons of different types of energy healing, and coaching.
And you have a retreat coming up.
I do. I have a retreat. There are 8 spots available. It is in Fallbrook, California, and it's at this beautiful luxury home, which is on really sacred land. It has a pond, a fairy garden, and it's an immersive nature retreat called Spirits of the Seasons. So it is July 14th, 15th, and 16th. And we would love for you to join us.
Excellent. And I'll have all of that linked in the show notes, so it's easy access.
Yay. Thank you.
Of course. What is your current mantra or life motto?
You know, one of my friend's fathers said this once, and he was kind of coaching her, but he said, some people are sad that it's raining, and other people just put a flippin' raincoat on. And for some reason, that has been resonating with me so much. Like, okay, just put a raincoat on and then you can go outside and it will all be okay.
If you could tell everybody in this world one thing and they would receive it, integrate it, put it into practice, what would that be?
Your heart and your soul know the way more so than your mind.
Hmm, beautiful. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank
Until
you.
next time. If you enjoyed this episode or found value in it, I invite you to like, leave a 5-star review, or share with a friend. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Thank you, beautiful human, so much for helping spread the word. Blessings to you. Until next time.